Hey, I'm here today to bring you guys another story time. This story time is about how I grew up and what I experienced being a psychic medium and a clairvoyant, and just the symptoms that I had growing up as a child. Hopefully this helps somebody else that went through similar things as a child growing up with spiritual gifts, being afraid, because it can be very terrifying, some of the things that you'll experience. And I'm going to tell a story time that hopefully helps other people to let them know they're not the only ones that go through this. And that many people that have spiritual gifts also go through this. So this is part one. So a little background information about me again. I'm from Oklahoma City. I was born in Oklahoma City, and I have a mom and dad. My mom is Native American and Black. We're all part of the Choctaw tribe. My dad's side is from Louisiana. And on my dad's side is where a lot of these spiritual gifts come from. I also have some from my mom's side, but we're going to focus on my dad's side because it runs rampant in our family to have spiritual gifts, to see spirits, to hear spirits and things like that. One thing that I'm grateful for is that it runs in my family and that I can talk to people in my family about it. Cousins, aunts, grandmother was always able to talk to her about it because it's normal. It's a normal occurrence in my family. Nobody makes you feel weird about it. I'm thankful for that. A lot of people don't have that, but that's how my situation was. But I grew up in a house that was very haunted, and having these gifts were very terrifying. I still remember the address of that house. It's 3301 North Coltrane Road, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Big black and white house, big yard. I'm going to show a little bit of that house so you guys can see during this video. I think I have the whole 360 video that I found on Google Maps this morning. So that's the house that I grew up in. My older sister, 4 years older than me, also has the gift to see spirits and all that other stuff. So when we were kids, a lot of times we would see these things together at the same time. Even today, when we talk about it together, it's hard for us to talk about it because it brings back memories of being so frightened when we were kids. So the house was haunted when we were kids. One of the earliest memories that I have in that house was I was about 5 years old, and I was sitting on the floor in the hallway playing jacks. And as I was sitting down playing jacks, you know, that's the game with the spiked metal, little metal spikes and the rubber ball that you play on the floor. And while I was playing that game, I heard a voice come from nowhere. It was like a man's voice. And the voice said, "Carla, you are very special, and I love you very much, and you're different from the rest of your family," meaning my mother and father and sister. Didn't know what that meant. I mean, I know today what it means, but I take it as the voice of God. And I've always remembered this. I've never been able to forget that. It was very profound. So I felt special in that moment, didn't feel afraid at all. And that was like a blessed feeling. So hearing voices, when I was 5 years old, the voice of God and the voice of spirits. One of the second memories was when me and my sister was a kid. The morning of Christmas, we got up, ran downstairs to open our presents. And it was in the living room downstairs, which is where a lot of activity happened. Spiritual activity, paranormal stuff. So we went down there into the living room where all the gifts were and the Christmas tree was. This was not that easy to talk about, but we had a Barbie car that our parents had bought us, and it was a pink Barbie car. And me and my sister, we ran to the bar. We were sitting down on the floor by the Barbie car, and both of our hands were on the Barbie car. And we're like pushing it forward and backwards. And we're making the little revving sound, like, rah, rah. And we're looking at each other like, this car is cool, it's cool. My sister was about 9, I was about 5 years old. And all of a sudden, we took our hands off the car, and the car radio came on by itself. And there wasn't a car radio. It didn't even have a remote. It wasn't a remote car. You had to push it for it to work. It was like the car radio came on in the car, and then it moved back upwards and backwards by itself. And there was like a deep man's voice that revved the car. They kind of like rumbled and grunted like, and the car moved forward and back by itself. So at that moment, me and my sister looked at each other and we said, and we ran upstairs to my parents' room. We ran up there and we was and we're breathing really hard. When we get upstairs, and my parents are like, what's wrong? What's going on? So we had to tell them, the car moved by itself and there was a man's voice and it moved. And my parents was like, girls, stop it. Girls, you're just imagining these things. Girls, stop it. It's only happening because you guys are bad. Mind you, this happened on Christmas Day, which was really not a great sign. But my dad always tried to be logical. He pretended that he didn't have the same spiritual gifts because he was a police officer. And he didn't want to feed into the things that he knew was happening to me and my sister. So he just always used the logical side and explanation of everything. Now, if I would have went and told my grandmother and my aunt that this happened, they would have been all over it. They would have been like, oh my God, you know, maybe something similar happened to them. They would have went into depth. They would have talked to me. And my sister, they would have been like, it's okay, baby. Let me tell you a story about what happened to me. It's fine. Last night, I was a ghost. You know, my grandma would be all over it. And my dad tried to play the logical side. So and I think maybe that helped so we wouldn't feed too much into it as kids and be really scared and overwhelmed. So, ooh, that's one of the darkest memories I have in that house. But I wanted to make a point about being from Louisiana and people in Louisiana having these type of gifts and why there's so much voodoo practice in Louisiana and why people have so many spiritual gifts in Louisiana. I did research on my own and I found out a lot of people have blood from Benin, Nigeria, Africa. And that's why so many people have so many spiritual gifts in Louisiana, that the slaves that were brought to Louisiana, a lot of those slaves came from Benin and different similar areas in that area. And I know there's also a lot of Haitian influence in Louisiana as well. And that's where a lot of people from New Orleans get their gifts. My dad was from Shreveport and his family was from the backwoods of Shreveport. But we all have these spiritual gifts. It's just runs rampant in my family. I actually have an aunt that is very powerful spiritually. She doesn't practice, but she has a lot of spiritual gifts. My aunt, for instance, if you offend her and she prays for you, you die. And she'll tell you this. And if any of my cousins see this video, they will confirm this. I'm not going to say my aunt's name, but people that have offended her in her life, and she's prayed to God for those people just pass away. And she knows this. And a lot of times when you talk to her, she says, you know, I can't pray for people. I'm not going to pray for them. Especially when they've made her mad or have done something horribly to offend her. Because if she prays for you, those people die. She sees more spirits and ghosts than mostly anybody in my family. It happens to her so often. She gets phenomenons, and she still does to this day. But yeah, that's how it started. There's so many scary times about that house. One more thing that happened in the house is me and my sister, when we were young, about the same age, maybe my sister was 10, maybe I was 6. And we were looking out the window in my bedroom upstairs because my sister never slept in her bedroom until she was 15 years old. There was one bedroom downstairs, which was my sister's, and 2 bedrooms upstairs. My mom and dad's was upstairs and mine was upstairs because I was the youngest. My sister slept in my bed every night until she was 15 years old because she would not sleep in her own bed downstairs by herself, and I understand why. Well, one night we were looking out the window looking for Santa Claus in the window because we still believed in Santa Claus, and we were looking for him to ride across the sky in his chariot with his deers and all of that. And so we're looking at the sky and we thought we saw Santa Claus. We really did. We saw like a chariot go across the sky and it looked like it was Santa Claus. And we were like, oh my God, Santa Claus is here. He's going to come through our chimney and we're going to see him. So we run downstairs. Our parents are asleep. It's late at night. We run downstairs. We sneak. The house is pitch black, but it's just a little light shining. We can see where we are. So we're holding each other's hands and we're walking down the hallway. And we're creeping through the house. And all of a sudden, we're walking through the kitchen. And we hear a man with boots on, like in a Santa Claus suit. We see the man. This is like a 3D ghost. And his boots are heavy and they're hitting the floor, and he's got on his Santa Claus suit, and it's a 3D ghost. It's not translucent. You can't see through it. And so we hurry up and ran so he wouldn't see us, but he turned his head and saw us like this. It was a black man in a Santa Claus suit. When I looked at the black man, it wasn't my dad. It wasn't my dad. It was another figure, a 3D figure in a Santa Claus suit. So we tried to run so he wouldn't see us, but he saw us and turned his head like this and looked at us, which scared the mess out of us. So we hurried up and ran into the dining room and hid behind this like ledge. Like me and my sister hid like, oh, he saw us. So we hid like this, like, oh, I hope he didn't see us. And all of a sudden when we hid behind the ledge, we were looking up like to see if he would come, if he saw us. And this man comes around like this, and his head comes around and looks at us, and he goes in his pocket and he takes out this handful of stars, and he throws it in me and my sister's eyes, like these golden stars. And when he threw them in our eyes, we were like, ah! And the next thing we remember is just waking up in the bed the next morning. We don't even remember how we got back in the bed. Me and my sister still talk about this story to this day. When I was in the Navy, I was telling this story to some of the girls that were in boot camp with me, and we couldn't talk on the phone to our family for, I think it was the first month that we were in boot camp. And I was telling the girls in boot camp about this story. All I could do was write my family back and forth. And the girls were so scared, in boot camp, told this story. 3 days later, I kid you not, 3 days later, I got a letter in the mail from my sister talking about the same story. I showed these girls, the girls in boot camp that I told the story to, and they were like, how the heck did your sister know you were talking about this story? I don't know. Me and my sister have always had a really tight spiritual connection, almost like twins. So yeah, that was really, really scary. There's so many other things. Like me and my sister used to see ghosts every single day in our house. It was normal. My parents were hardworking, so they would have to leave us at home by ourselves while they were at work. And me and my sister would be in the den watching TV, and there was always this black figure, ghost, man with a top hat on. And he would always walk up and down the hall. So me and my sister would be on the couch watching TV, and we would see this figure every day. So the figure would walk by this French door we had, this door with glass. It was a French door. Spirit would walk by. He would walk by just a man, a tall figure with a black hat on. And when we see it, I see it and be like, now I look at my sister like, you see that? And she'd be like, yeah. And we'd be like, that spirit, it got so common that we weren't afraid of that one anymore. But I feel like the spirits in the house, when we didn't get afraid enough, when we got too used to seeing them, they would do something every once in a while outlandish to scare the living daylights out of us. And we were scared so many times in that house. My dad wants to profess that he didn't believe in spirituality, but there was one time when we had a gas leak in the house. And my dad told me about this story, and we were all asleep. And for some reason, something woke my dad up in the middle of the night. And he realized that the gas was on, and that it had been on, and that, there was a lot of gas going in the air, and that our house literally could have blew up. I forgot how my daddy said exactly what was wrong with the gas leak in the house, but how he found out. I forgot exactly how he told me, but he said he had to go and turn off that gas and get us out of the house for a minute, because if he hadn't have done that, our house could have exploded. And my dad professes that, he's never had any spiritual experiences, but my aunt has told me different. There was one time I saw this very spiritual ghost in the house. Okay, I saw this entity in the house late night. Me and my sister were watching a scary movie, and the same French door, glass door, that we had in the den, looked through the door. My sister's room was across the hall from the door. We were up late watching some movie, I don't know. My sister was sitting in the back where she couldn't see the same view that I was seeing. She couldn't see it. All of a sudden, I looked at the French door, and there was this, like these two red flashlights, eyes, big bright red eyes, and there's just blackness around it. I couldn't see the figure of the entity, but the eyes were so big, and they were like big red flashlights, and it was a short entity because the eyes didn't come up that high. And it was staring at me, and it scared me so bad, and I started screaming. And my sister was sitting back at a different angle, and she said, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" I said, "There's that ghost. It's got big red eyes. Stop looking at me. It won't stop looking at me." And she said, "What do you?" I said, "You don't see it because you can't see it." I said, "Come see it. Come look at it." She sat back in her chair where she was and said, "I ain't coming to look." So I kept screaming, "Ah!" Because usually, like, if I see a ghost and scream or do something like that, it'll go away. This one didn't go away. No matter how much I screamed, it wouldn't go away. My dad ran downstairs with a gun because, of course, he's a police officer. He didn't know what it was. He searched the whole room. It was the first time I saw my dad do, like, some action police officer thing when they have the gun, they're searching, they're pulling the gun. You know what I mean? They're, like, looking across the wall and got the lights on, and he's standing behind the... He searched the whole house and didn't see anything. And then my dad said, "You girls need to go to bed. That's why you keep seeing scary things." And it's more than that. "Dad, you wouldn't be seeing all these spirits. Now get up and go to bed." And that was the end of that. I learned that my grandma, aunt, and many people in my family have seen the same ghost, including my dad. My aunt told me my dad saw it as well. He just never admitted to it. I'll have part 2 for y'all a little bit later. Thanks for watching.